Cashflow Diary podcast, episode 426.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you're here today because we're going to talk about one of those topics that I believe, and I know you are beginning to believe or deepening your belief on, that is required, absolutely mandatory. Think of it as a prerequisite for throwing your hat in the ring if you ever want the title of successful entrepreneur. It's something that you must learn to do. Otherwise, you won't be around long. You're like, what are you talking about, Jay? Well, today we're going to be talking about, leadership development. And more importantly, we're going to go beyond the label. What you're like, what does that mean? Well, I'm talking about how important is it? More importantly than that, what is it? And can it be taught? Can it be learned? Am I cut out for it? In fact, I think today's guest would say you can learn. I have with me none other than Scott Kriens. He is the chairman and former CEO of Juniper Networks. And in 2010, he and his wife founded 1440 Foundation and now building 1440 Multiversity. You're like, Jay, are you making up words? No, I'm not. I'm telling you, you're going to want to understand how you can participate in an immersive learning destination that is opening so that you and I can learn to become better leaders. Yes, better leaders. Finally, somebody is going to give us a place to go so that we can learn how to grow ourselves and others. So let's take out those pens, those pads, those papers, whatever you're taking notes with, and let's listen to Scott Kriens. Scott, you there?
Yes, Jay. Good to be with you.
I'm glad that you are taking the time. I can only imagine right now you are busy.
We are a little bit hectic at the moment, but it's all good.
It's the life we sign up for. So when this being the first time that you are here, what I have to do is I got to ask you the same question that I tend to ask everybody the first time that they're here. You ready?
I am.
All right. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. You know, Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, etc. Because I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. Occasionally, in fact, an entrepreneur, we can envision ourselves as flying around the world, saving people, using our special skills and abilities, and occasionally we imagine ourselves dressed up with capes and tights. So also, like a superhero, an entrepreneur has a beginning. So if you think about Spider-Man, for example, there was a time where he was just a college kid going to school, trying to get the good grades, and, taking some photos to make sure that he could eat. And then one day he gets bit by a spider and discovers that, oh my, I have a newfound ability that I get to choose to use for good or evil. So my question to you, Scott, is, before the foundation, before Juniper, before even, meeting your wife, before everything that people know you for today, my question is, who is Scott Kriens?
Wow. Well, that's a lot to consider, Jay.
Good.
What I started out being, and hopefully I will always be more than anything else, is just curious and interested in trying to figure out what I don't know. And it actually is something I learned from my dad, which is that you can learn a lot more by listening than you can by talking. because hopefully you at least know what you're talking about already. And it's by looking and listening that you can learn what maybe you didn't know or didn't understand as well. So I don't claim any perfect discipline at doing that, but it's what I suppose would hope to remember before growing up and going out into the world. And I'm not actually sure that's changed very much. I think hopefully I'm getting better at it. And I think that learning is, I'll at least say for myself, one of the best ways I can think of to spend time. A lot of different ways to do it. I don't necessarily, in fact, I don't at all mean sitting in a lecture hall with a textbook open. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But for me, hopefully that's something I can continue to make a priority of, because I think it's a pretty good way to pass time.
Got it. Yeah, I would obviously agree, and clearly the listeners do, because that's kind of what they do, is to listen and to learn and to understand. So I guess take us on this journey. Like, did you just wake up one day as the CEO of Juniper Networks, or what came first?
I think for me, what came first was coming to learn, and I won't make a long story of how, but I think what I came to believe is that you can only do what makes sense to you, and not do it because somebody else is telling you that it makes sense to them. So in this process of learning and listening, it's also important that I think for anybody that doesn't just happen, meaning that you absorb as fact or truth what you hear. And so I think what I learned early on was there's a lot of input out there and there's a lot to be listened to, but then after that, it's up to me to decide whether it makes sense. And ultimately, the person that I have to rely on for that judgment is myself. And it's complicated, because we should certainly benefit from the experiences of others, and we should take wise counsel. But oftentimes, if I sit down with someone today that's looking for advice, one of my first pieces of advice is don't take anyone else's advice.
Okay. That's
listen, process it, synthesize it, make use of it, but don't just take it, because only what you believe is right is right. Got it.
Understood. Now, so what was the journey like then? I'm assuming, you school and all these types of things, but what was the journey like to get to the point to where you are today? Because you've done a number of things in your past, which I think the skill sets and the things that you may have learned there play into what you're doing today. So before we talk about that, I would love to understand a little bit more about where you've been, and then we'll start talking about where you're going.
Sure. Well, for me, it started, I got out of school a long, long time ago. And in 1980, started in the computer business. In the later 80s, with the divestiture of AT&T and the breakup of the phone company, one piece of wise counsel I got was, if you disassemble one of the largest monopolies in the world and break it into all these pieces, a bunch of money is going to fall on the floor, and somebody has to pick it up. And there's a bunch of change that's going to happen. And so my career shifted from computing to networking pretty early on in the mid 80s. And I had the good fortune to be part of a couple of companies, one for about 10 years that started the technology and the networking business, and went from a small handful of us to being a public company, and ultimately being sold after about 10 years for it was about $4.5 billion. I wasn't the CEO of that company, but I had a good seat in the room to learn from some really good people what that journey was like over a 10-year period. And then in the mid 90s, I took a break, and we had our first child. And when I took that deep breath and looked around for what to do next, I had the good fortune to meet a really brilliant engineer. His name's Pradeep Sindhu, who is the founder of Juniper. And it was Pradeep and about 6 or 8 guys who had the idea to start this company on the possibility that the internet was going to be a big thing. And what we had the opportunity to be in the right place at the right time to do was build a lot of the infrastructure underneath what we all see today. So if you ever wondered when you type in jmassey @ and send it to somebody, how in the world does it get there? And who sorts out right now it's about 7 or 8 billion different addresses in the world and makes sure that Jay's message goes to the person Jay wanted it to go to. That's what we do.
Wow.
And so you don't see it, but you use it every day. And so does almost everybody, or 3/4 of the people on the planet today. It's just that it's buried in the infrastructure. And what we see instead is Google and Facebook and so forth. But all of that relies on, and we're not the only company, there's 2 or 3 others, but what a very small number of companies do underneath all of this to make it happen. And so in that, in meeting Pradeep, who had some really great ideas about how to do that back in 1996, I had the chance to become the CEO. There was, as I said, it was about 10 of us at the time. It was a couple of years before we had a product. And we did some things well, and we were in the right place at the right time. And the company's grown to today it's about a $5 billion company, and there's about 10,000 people working here.
Now,
I'm still the chairman of the board. I'm not the CEO anymore. That was 12 years.
Got it. Now, so that I'm clear, you said it took you guys a couple of years before you had a product? Yes?
Yeah, we started in 96 with a small number of us, and it was about 2 years later, and the company had grown to about 200 people and had spent about $35 million by the time our first product came to market.
Whoa. Okay. That there's a number of people who are probably listening because and thinking similar thoughts to myself is how on earth did you get, what was the idea of not having a product for 2 years for some people right now that are contemplating their ideas and their visions? I mean, obviously, if you know it's going to turn into what you guys are today, sure, it's worth the wait. But each day had to be an exercise in leadership, and that you must share a story or two. There's got to be something there.
Well, there's a lot of stories. It's the reason it took so long is because the technologies that we use are based on silicon wafer technology and silicon wafer design, which takes a year and a half or 2. And silicon is really just sand. And so you spend a year to a year and a half designing a chip, several of them in our case, and you don't know if they're going to work until you get them back. And so there were several sort of forks in the road, epic days at Juniper where the chip came back and you plugged it in for the first time, and you might have been looking at the new network technology, and you might have just been looking at a little square of sand that didn't work. And if it didn't, you started over.
Wow.
And so we had several heart-stopping days where many of us huddled over a engineer's bench at 3 o'clock in the morning, wondering, with our life in the hands of this little piece of sand, was it going to come to life and talk to us or not? And unfortunately or fortunately, it's fortunate when you get it right, in which we happened to do a lot of in the days of bringing the company up. And it's fortunate that it's so hard, because it's hard to compete with that. But it's a little scary, and we had more than a few of those scary moments in the midst of making everything happen that happened to bring the company alive.
So let's talk about that just for a second, because you, as the leader, we each have to lead our staff, our team, our customers, our investors, our whatever, because they're all looking at you for the answer of, hey, what's going on with my money? When are you going to fix the product? Or how in the team, is this job secure? Everybody's asking those types of questions. Did I make the right decision? All of those things are questions that are going through the respective parties' minds as this is happening. What would you say would be something that a would-be entrepreneur, an entrepreneur right now, needs to be aware of so that when they enter in those phases of extreme uncertainty, that they can be better prepared for them?
The most important thing, in my opinion, for a leader to do in any time, actually, it's just that it matters more in times of uncertainty and doubt, is tell the truth about being uncertain and having doubts. Because people know it's true. And if you pretend it isn't, then you've already lost the connection and the trust that you need to make it through uncertain, doubtful times. And so I think there's a false leadership image that it's the captain standing at the helm in the storm saying that this is no problem while the ship is tossed in heavy seas and might make it to port and might not. If you pretend there's no storm out there or that there's nothing that you can't do, that's not credible.
Yeah.
And if people don't, then they either think, that only leaves a person listening to that to conclude one of two things. Either he doesn't understand what's going on here, or he doesn't think I understand what's going on here. And he's trying to tell me something that he thinks I will believe, even though it isn't true. And if you start there in a relationship, I don't care what kind of relationship it is, chances of that being a healthy, flourishing, trusted relationship are near zero. And in uncertain, doubtful times, without strong relationships, you don't have a chance.
Yeah, I got it. So, in essence, you're saying you're basically giving us the permission to say, I don't know.
I don't know, and if it's true, I might be scared to death.
Oh, not only do I not know, but I'm scared to death too. Okay, got it.
If this doesn't work, if this piece of silicon turns out to be dead sand, then we're in really bad shape. And it's not because, the reason it's so important to say that is because everybody knows it's true. Nobody knows that better than the people building the silicon in the case of the Juniper story. But it doesn't mean that you therefore just walk away in despair, obviously, because there's a mix in all of this, which I believe, which is, let's stare straight at the situation with no filters that we're in, and then let's figure out what we're going to do.
Yeah.
But you can't skip over that first step, in my experience.
Right. No, agreed. And I appreciate that, because there can be the thought process that we're supposed to already know the answer, or we're supposed to, how can I inspire confidence in people if I'm not confident? And having the freedom to say, look, I don't know this time, but we're going to go find out, or I'm scared just like you, because, my future's riding on this too. That can be a comforting place to be. So take us from, Juniper, obviously it's something you still, part of in a different way, but now you're focused on 1440 and the 1440 multiversity, because here's what I know about entrepreneurs. We don't go to create something, especially something like what you're doing, unless we see that there's a really big need. So I'm really interested to understand what need you see that makes such a foundation and multiversity required. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening, and I'm glad that you are enjoying what you are hearing thus far. But here's one of the things that's really important. one of the most important things that you can do is get started. One of the things that I've said before, and I say again, once you get started, stay started. But more importantly, there can be lots of roadblocks to getting started. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove one of those roadblocks for you and make it a little bit easier. Because the thing that I don't want to stop you is thinking, do I need a local number? How about a long distance number? Or should it be 800? How on earth am I going to make that happen so that people can contact me as I'm out there building my business, making my cash flow grow? But most importantly, understanding that it doesn't have to be difficult. Many of you may know, but if you don't, there's a company out there by the name of Grasshopper. And what I want you to do is I want you to go over to trygrasshopper.com/cashflow diary. Grasshopper is the entrepreneur's phone system. It works like a traditional phone system, but requires no hardware to purchase, no software to install. It's just a number that flat works. So if you are out there building that distributed workforce across many different locations, it's a way for you to still go out there and make your number be unified, simple, easy to use, something we've been using for quite some time. So again, go over to trygrasshopper.com/cashflow diary. Now, let's get back to the rest of the story.
I came to the belief about the answer to your question. The answer to your question is, I think stronger relationships is what's needed. I came to that belief through the conversation we were just having by learning a lot and having a lot of help from people in understanding that what the definition of leadership is really relationship steward. That if you manage and build deep, strong relationships, and that doesn't mean go to ball games and have dinner, and I mean, it doesn't exclude those things, but it's not just about being a good guy or spending time. It's about really connected, trusted relationships that's a prerequisite for leadership. The sort of growth from there to at least what we now believe and what is the basis of 1440 and the multiversity is that's actually the most critical tonic for leading a healthy, rich life. And it's not just a leadership concept. It's obviously true in personal life, whether it's in a marriage or a family relationship or in a relationship with ourselves. And it's true it's one of the most valuable components in the relationship between a doctor and a patient or between a teacher and a student. And yet there's very little training or teaching on how to be good at relationships. And relationship actually should be considered a verb. It's not a thing. It's an action. And yet there's an incredible number of great teachers in various disciplines and domains around the attributes of being capable of and intentional about being a strong relationship practitioner. And so that really is the basis of the foundation. And the basis of the multiversity is let's formalize and let's really hold a space where people can come and learn how to be in deeper, more connected relationships. That might be in your workplace with your team. It might be in your home with your wife or with your children. It might be with yourself and being healthier and more nutritious and more emotionally connected. And it might be in the professional settings of a classroom or a doctor's office or elsewhere. And those are all the different disciplines that we try and offer the invitation to be better at being in these strong relationships in these different theaters, because we think it's actually one of the most important things to be good at in life.
So, okay. I'm definitely agreeing with you. I'm just amazed at your, I will call it courage. So let me ask the question differently, in the sense that you could make the case that, hey, you've made your contribution with, prior things that you've done. I guess the question becomes, why was it necessary for you? Why did you feel that you were the one to bring this to the market? And more importantly, why take the risk?
Well, when in 2010, when we formed the foundation, my wife Joanie and I were looking. We had the good fortune in our lives of having some resource to give back, and we're trying to figure out what to do. And to make that long story short, that belief I shared about the power of relationships and the impact that it's had in our own lives is what really compelled us. The best things that have happened to us in our lives have happened when there were strong relationships, and the worst things that have happened to us in our lives have happened in the absence of that. And so we felt like it was the thing that we'd been most touched by. And then as we thought more about it, we thought, it feels like actually the thing that probably most people have been most touched by. And so we went out with some really good advice we got from someone who said, before you do anything in whatever your philanthropic interest is, go find out what's already been done. And don't presume that you just arrive and have some sudden insight that people in your interested area haven't already figured out. So we started out making a lot of grants. And what we found were that there's a whole universe of incredible teachers in all kinds of different domains and dimensions that we call the relationship area, or you could call it wellness or well-being, and we all aspire to be well.
Right.
But and the thing that we discovered, and it's really what created the enthusiasm and the excitement, is that there's a tangible, measurable path towards well-being. And it's about developing these skills, and they are skills and things you can learn and things you can practice. And, being well and being connected to your life and to what surrounds you is not just a, abstract romantic thing to watch happen to other people in movies. It's an achievable condition. It's a life choice that you can, like anything else, and there's great teachers. That's really, to answer your question, I guess that's what inspired us, was the great power of the content and the teachers that are out there in the world. And our vision was, how can we amplify and accelerate the impact of the teachings that already exist? And then that led to the foundation of the Multiversity.
Got it. So for those that are listening, because we've done this, we've used this word a couple of times. We've used 1440, we've used multiversity. You call it the 1440 multiversity, totally something that a lot of people may not be familiar with. What would you call it if you were asked today?
Well, a couple things to know. The reason we named it 1440 is because that's the number of minutes in a day. And that was Joanie's choice for the name. And what it really means, the first step in this notion of being well is being present. Just being in this minute right now with you, Jay, having this conversation is my practice of being present. And most of our time, unfortunately, gets spent either fretting about the past or worrying about the future.
Yeah.
And so being mindful or being in the present moment is not so easy, but it's a really important thing. And it's actually the only really great use of one's time anyway, because we can't be in the past or the future. So that's where 1440 as the name itself comes from. Multiversity is really first of all, what it is, it's a destination. It's in a redwood forest, and it's in the Santa Cruz Mountains in Silicon Valley. And there's 75 acres of ancient redwoods. And we've taken the property there and built this learning destination, this place to come and just, in some cases, just relax and enjoy yourself, but then take something home from it. Because while you're there, participate in a class. And we call it a multiversity because it's meant to meet people in the area of interest that they have, meet people where they are. What relationships would you like to have be stronger and better in your life? Is it work related? Is it personal? Is it health? Is it wellness? It can be severe for some people. If you're struggling with anxiety or stress or depression, maybe just taking chemical pharmaceuticals isn't the answer. There's a lot of research to support that. There's a lot of MDs and PhDs that are teaching at Multiversity. So the Multiversity is just a place to come and explore the aspects of your life that you would like to work on and to improve, and to realize that there's tangible content and curriculum and teachers and community and people that if they're interested in that same class, then it's a couples workshop or a parent-child workshop or a leadership development course. You're gonna find a lot of other people that are interested in the same things.
Yeah,
and it's a great way to learn.
Okay, so I'm gonna play devil's advocate for a moment here and just ask. I mean, there's a lot of this talk about education and teachers, and they're available online. Why did it need to be a physical place in your opinion?
It's a great question, Jay, and we have a very strong belief about that, and it's one of the reasons we talk about immersion or immersion learning. It's because in order to really, and it doesn't replace online learning or online access to information, it's really a complement, because many of these teachers, most of them have online material, and we'll be broadcasting things from Multiversity for people to consume that can't be there and so forth. So these are all complementary. But if growth and change in one's life is really important, there's some dedication to it that's necessary. It's very difficult to do that just checking in online or picking it up on your phone, and an hour later everything that you're trying to change is surrounding you again. It's pretty hard to chip away at that. And so the notion of immersion learning is really to come and spend. It doesn't have to, it could be a weekend. A lot of our programs are offered from Friday afternoon to Sunday lunch, or it could be a week, or it could be a month. But you can come for just a couple of days, set down the smartphone, and let someone else watch the dog and the kids, and just spend a couple of days immersed in really pausing and getting off the treadmill that we're all on out in the busy world every day, and stopping to take an assessment and to look at what we want to do the same and what we want to do differently. And we think that it's actually critical, if you really want to grow and change and improve and modify somehow how you're living your life, you've got to put some time into doing that. And if it can be uninterrupted, the power of that is exponential. 48 hours spent on our grounds in the redwoods and in classes and with the teachers is worth 480 hours, 1 hour at a time, hit and miss, over lunch or after dinner or in between getting the kids put to bed. So it's just much more powerful.
Got it. Okay. And I had a feeling you were going to say something similar to that. Now, not to put you on the spot, but I'm kind of curious, what would you say are some of the, either your favorite or the most well-received programs that you guys offer? Well,
we haven't opened yet.
Okay.
So we open in about a month, but there's some great teachers that are coming. Rob Bell, who's somebody that people might know, is going to be teaching. Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. Cheryl Strayed, who wrote Wild, are teaching a course together called Brave Magic. We have neuroscientists, we have PhDs that teach things about leadership and about how well we understand the brain and how important it is to relax and be receptive. And Sharon Salzberg is coming. She is going to be teaching a meditation course on our opening weekend. there's a whole cross section of people from all different walks. Sean Korn is coming, who's a very well known yoga teacher. There's a whole lot of folks that are coming in all different disciplines that have been very successful and popular teachers for lots of years, and that are now just coming to be at the Multiversity with us. So while we haven't hosted those courses yet until we open, we've been incredibly well supported by a whole lot of teachers that have been impacting people's lives for decades that are coming to teach in the Redwoods with us.
Totally makes sense. And as I was going through the site, I noticed that not all of the courses are directed towards adults.
No, there are some programs that are, in fact, the opening weekend, we have some programs on parent-child. So it's a mother-daughter courses, and with volumes and the challenges your new way. So it is primarily teenagers and then adults. We also have a family week that brings in, as it says, families and kids. We have a service week I can talk about, but there's a lot of different aspects to the offerings that we're really excited about.
Well, and that's kind of what I wanted to give people an understanding that you had a wide breadth, and I was like, wow, this is a large undertaking that I think you're tapping into here. So when it comes down to it, let me ask this question: where do you see this going? You've got a lot of runway in front of you. You got a lot of support. What is it that you hope it ultimately becomes?
I have a probably unexpected answer to your question, because what I hope it becomes is obsolete.
Interesting.
And by that, I mean that these teachings about relationship and about being better connected to ourselves, being more self-aware, being more able to self-regulate, to make conscious choices, to be in better relationships, it ought to be taught in school. In fact, in the world we're in, there's a lot of people that refer to relationships as the fourth R. So with reading, writing, and arithmetic, if we learned how to be in relationship, we could take the first three and do a lot more with them. Because in order to go out into particularly to the work world, perhaps the audience that we have today, being able to build trust and being able to be in reliable, resilient, rich relationships, whether you're an accountant or an engineer or a salesperson or anyone else, that's going, in my opinion, that's going to have more impact on bringing the rest of yourself and your craft to the marketplace and to the workplace to be successful than the numbers and the letters and the names and the words that you learn in science and math and English. And yet it's not taught. So if in being an accountant or a doctor, if you could learn the skills of how to listen deeply, how to empathize with someone else, how to speak authentically and courageously, you'd be a better accountant and a better doctor. And so I hope 1440 becomes irrelevant and Multiversity just becomes another destination for every student in school on their way to getting their education, because it's the most important education you can get.
Nice. I like it. So for those that have listened this far and, are resonating with the message, what's going to be the best way for them to find out more about what you guys got going on, and how can they connect with you guys?
The simplest way to do so is just go to 1440.org. It's 1440.org. And there's plenty there on the campus and the whole facility. It's a pretty incredible location we've had the opportunity to develop. It's as I said, it's an ancient redwood forest. There's 1,000-year-old redwood trees there. And to that, we've added the dining facilities. We have farm-to-table offerings, and cafes, and we have healing arts buildings where you can get massage and body treatments. There's a teaching kitchen. There's 4 miles of trails through the redwood forest and a creek that runs through all of it. So the facility itself you can learn a little bit more about, but also go to the faculty. And you can learn they're in 3 categories: the professional development teachers, the personal growth teachers, and then health and wellness is the 3rd area. And just look for something that's of interest. And all of it is at 1440.org.
Awesome. So as we wind down here, I've got a final question for you, and I'm wondering if you're going to give me another unexpected answer. Let's pretend for a moment that someone listening is standing in what I would call, in front of what I would call the proverbial superhero outfit store. You know, they think they're going to take this entrepreneur thing and they're going to go crush it, or they're already there and they're just trying to do it bigger, better, badder in some way, shape, or form. However, during that process, what's happening is that there's that voice that accompanies us anytime we're trying to do more, be more, become more. And for some people, they're actually related to that voice. So they've heard it often. So my question to you is as follows. If you knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that they were actually going to follow through, they were actually going to do what you suggest, and they're going to do so in the next 24 to 48 hours, what would you suggest that they do?
So I'm not sure I understand. What would they do?
Yes. What would they do? What would be that step that they would need to take? What's going to either get them beyond that voice? Because that voice is loud. Anytime we're trying to grow our business, make it better, even start a business, looking for the understanding of what they should do in order to make that next step possible for themselves.
Well, I would say, I guess I would say the most important thing I can add, and I don't want to sound presumptuous as if I were to understand anybody's situation without knowing more than just what we've set up as the theoretical case here. Look really courageously and authentically and truthfully at yourself and what you are and what you wish you were but aren't, and be willing to stare at that, and this is the critical part, then admit it to someone else and ask for some help.
Wow. Yeah, that's kind of... go ahead.
And the real worrisome condition would be if you didn't think you needed any. Then you really need it.
Totally understood. Yeah, that one's good. I like it. I definitely want to say that I appreciate what you guys are doing. I'm glad that someone's taking it on. And thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge, your insight, as well as your wisdom here with us today at the Cashflow Diary, sir.
Thank you, Jay. I've enjoyed it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? Get over to 1440.org. That's 1440, all the numbers, .org. Because you know you heard something. You learned something. You want to learn more somethings and become a bigger, better, better version of you. And well, now you have a great destination to go to. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.